to my channel. My name is Lynn, and today I have a very special guest, my husband, Connor.
Hey, what's up? It's good to be here.
And we just felt like we should really make a video just kind of how to fight well in marriage. And we aren't perfect by any means, and we'll tell you that all day long. I just recently wrote a blog post, and I basically start with that. We're not perfect, and we don't portray to be perfect, and we don't try to be perfect, and we don't even pray to be perfect, honestly. But we do want to give you some tips that we've learned as we've transitioned into dating, into engagement, and into marriage.
Yeah. We have had the honor of just being poured into, and something that we want to learn and get to one day is where we can pour into others, and just how to, like Lynn said, is how we can fight well and fight for our covenant marriage that God has allowed us to dive into together with Him. So that's something that we just really want to share with you today.
Yeah, and ooh, nice, right? I just asked him to be a part of this, and he's killing it. So,
I don't know about that.
So the first thing that we can think of that I probably think might work the best for us is, I forget who told us this, but a piece of advice that we were given is whenever we're in an argument to put our hands up like this, put your hands up,
Yeah.
and say 1, 2, 3,
Growth opportunity. So with that, when we say that, throughout an argument, whatever it may be, we always say at the end of it and just think, how can we really learn from this? Obviously, how can we grow from this? How can we point our marriage back to the cross?
And I think the biggest thing is sometimes it's not really at the end of the argument. Sometimes it's in the middle of the argument. And I say that because when you're in the middle of an argument, no matter who you feel like it's their fault, I think someone in the relationship has to come to a point where they say, okay, I lay down my pride, and I don't need to be right, and I don't need to win, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But to say, hey, growth opportunity in the middle of it, to say, it's just a reminder to be like, hey, what's really important to us? Is this worth fighting over? And is it a good use of our time?
Yeah.
So I think that's like a really big thing, is saying, hey, I don't want to win. I want to allow this to grow us and to allow our marriage to prosper and not crumble. So. And
I want to touch on that too, is as from the husband's point of view, and as a male, typically as men, we want to be the ones to win. We're competitive, this and that. And I feel like at times for myself, I've gotten to a point where Lynn and I will be in an argument, and so oftentimes I feel like I'm the one that messed up, or I did something wrong. And there's times where my flesh and my pride gets in the way, and I want to point things on her, and I want to say, hey, you're wrong. Like, I want to be like, oh, check mark for me, I win. But I think that's just Satan, trying to get in between me and my walk with Christ. It's not about me versus her. It's us together, and our purpose as marriage when we came together was to have greater purpose with that covenant with God. Something that I've had to really learn is kind of like setting aside my pride, like she said a minute ago, and saying like, hey, what's best for our marriage? What's best for the kingdom?
It's realizing that you might be in a fight or in a disagreement, and like almost stopping it there. Like sometimes there are fights where you can continue and you can like argue your points, but sometimes it's not worth it. And so I think that brings it into our next thing that we've learned, is that we have created a list of 5 things that we really care about, that align with our core values and what we want for our marriage. And so a few of those things being faith,
health, and
finances,
our family,
and our purpose.
And then our purpose, yeah.
We picked those 5 things for a reason, because if we find ourselves in an argument and we can step back and say, hey, are our top 5? Are
Do
these
these-
the
do
top
these-
things that we care about?
Yeah, does this argument fall into one of these 5?
Yeah. So if it falls into our 5 important categories, then yes, let's take more time to figure it out and work through it, because sometimes arguments, they can take a while, and sometimes it can be frustrating, but you have got to like state your opinion. And so if they're not in those top 5, like it's just gone immediately. It's silly to even argue about it at that point, because they're not in your top 5 of what you care about. And you know, you can have a top 5 or a top 3 or really whatever you think is important to you, but creating that list is going to help you like just succeed and just not like pick your battles.
I think
really.
it just saves time, really arguing and fighting about things that don't have much purpose at all to it, you know. And and I think our goal for us is to really just find the value in how we can grow together. And if it doesn't fall into one of those 5, then you know it's not something that's worth it to us that we can really talk about and grow through.
Yeah. And I think another good one is prayer.
Yeah.
So sometimes we gotta pray for God to come and show up and intercede and help us like figure out even what we're arguing about. Because sometimes you can get in the middle of the argument and you're like, what were we even fighting about in the first place?
Yeah, because I mean, we're all human, and there's definitely times when our humanness wants to bring up old things, and it can make it worse. And like you said, we can forget.
Yeah. So like one thing that I talk about too in my blog post is it's not bringing up baggage, like not playing that big blame game either. Like, so if there's a certain time that Connor and I fight and I forgive him, like I'm not gonna bring that up in our next fight, even if he's done the same thing, because like Jesus doesn't do that to us, so why would we do that to our partner? And I think a reason why we're able to fight better when the gospel is at the center of our lives. So if that's kind of in the background and that's not our focus and something that we like center ourselves on, then it can be easy to fight all the time over things that don't matter. But when the gospel is centered and we know Jesus' love and Jesus' kindness and the way that he forgives us immediately, then I'm able to say, I can step back and say, if that was given to me first, then I can give that to my husband, and it's easy, really.
Yeah, and I just think that's kind of living out like our purpose in this life that God has given to us, and something that we talk about is love God and love others, and you know that's where we're at, and I mean that's how God loves us. And he loves us unconditionally. He loves us without remembering how we failed him yesterday or how we sinned against him yesterday, and that's the basis of grace. Is God's grace is abundant for you and I, and with that, you know, there's forgiveness and
it's about like bringing your faith into your marriage and making it a real thing. Because once you have experienced that type of love that Jesus has given you, like it is so much easier to give out of that kind of heart. And sometimes it is stepping back and saying, hey, I'm not being Christ-like. How can I do that moving forward?
Yeah. And I think something going off of that we've done here recently is really just assess where our relationship is, where our heart's at, and you know how we can be more intentional with one another. Because there's sometimes there's hurt that can come about from being busy with our day-to-day lives. How we can pursue one another greater in our marriage. And with that, how we can honor the Lord better with what we're doing, where we're serving, where we're spending our time.
We sit down on Sundays. That's another thing, just the last thing that we'll talk about, is we sit down on Sundays and really make it just a purposeful time where we can ask each other questions. I know I've shared this before, but a few questions we ask are, what can we do better at this week? Or how can I serve you better this week? What went well and what didn't go so well? And just asking each other those questions and being honest enough to tell each other like really what we felt like we could work on. And just talk about those things and make it a goal to pick one thing to work on. So this past week, we sat down and we just felt like we weren't being pursued. I mean, either of us, as intentionally as we wanted to. So we're like, okay, let's go into this next week with our eye on the prize. That's what we're gonna do. And we are just gonna like work hard on that.
And we're gonna make just conscious efforts daily to say, hey, like I choose you every single day. Yeah, marriage is hard, life is hard, and God never said it was gonna be easy, but I am pursuing your heart. I wanna know more of you, what you're going through, how our marriage can grow, and just how I can love you even better. And I just think this week has been a great week. It's been a busy week, but we have both, you know, something that's big for us is words of affirmation and quality time. Words of affirmation, we've written each other like little notes. Lynn wrote me a note on a napkin before my test this past week, and I wrote her a couple notes on the fridge, one in her journal. And
it's just in the little things. And I will say though, it is so important for me at least to be in God's word and to have my own time with him. So that way, that is my very first priority. Like when I wake up in the morning, like that is what I want to do and create as a habit. So that way, out of that love that I know I have from God, like I'm able to give it to Connor and just know at the end of the day, like if Connor didn't pursue me well that day, like that's not going to completely crush me because I know I've got a God who loves me unconditionally and who gives me my full worth and purpose. And then when Connor does, it's supplemental to my life. It adds more to my life. And so I just think when we are spending time in the Word, it is so evident in the way that we love each other. And we're not perfect, I mean, in any means, like I said earlier, but we've noticed that when we are spending time with God and we know his truth and we know his promises, it is a billion times easier to give that love to somebody else.
And we lean into that covenant that we made together, and we think back on the day that we said I do to each other and the covenant we made with the Lord, and it really just fuels our lives and our hearts to be more like Jesus.
And it's a love that, you know, we call it a covenant, and we try not to call it a marriage because a covenant is just so special, and a covenant isn't a contract, and it's not conditional or circumstantial. And like a love like that resembles a love that Jesus has, and it says, I'm gonna give to you without anything, you know, expecting anything in return. Like that selfless kind of love that we don't deserve, but we have anyways. And so I hope those tips helped you, and they have definitely helped us in our marriage. And if you would like to see any more like these kind of videos from us, I'm sure we would love to make them. Just just let us know. But we'll keep popping in here and making fun videos together because it's just fun for us to reflect back on what we've learned. But yeah, it's good, huh?
Yeah, I love that. And this, I mean, really, we love being poured into by people who are further on the journey, and we really hope this video resonates with you wherever you're at, whether it's in singleness or dating, engagement, or marriage. We just hope that God has spoken through us and to you.
Yes. Thank you so much for watching, and of course, subscribe if you want to see when we post more videos. Bye guys, love you.
See ya.